Hey guys, welcome to the Rare Slot. These are the bonus episodes of the Booster Pack podcast. My name is Rand, and on these shows, we are going to still be unwrapping stories and cracking mysteries of collectible game history, but we're doing it in a format-free way. We might be smaller episodes, and we might be covering different topics that we don't normally cover in the main episodes. So today we are joined by an amazing guest who has a fantastic untold story from collectible game history, and I'm really excited that he's going to share it with us today. But before I do get there and introduce him, I just want to do a little preamble about sort of leading into our episode. So Magic the Gathering hits the gaming world in 1993 like a lightning bolt and brings with it the entire collectible card game genre. And in the years that follow, dozens of other companies jump into the collectible card game waters and explore this new territory. With about 100 released by the end of 1996, there is a complete boom in the industry. There is collectible card games on all sorts of topics, but eventually this boom leads to a crash. And by about mid-1997, most of them had fallen away. So no doubt in this explosion of games, of the hundreds that were released, there was several hundred more that probably weren't. Ones that got lost. They were play tested and they were developed, but they never really made it to market in the form that they were expecting. And there's a reason that this can happen, many different reasons, like the publisher might have got cold feet about the bust coming, or the licensee that the property was going to be used for pulled out, or even the game got retooled into something else entirely. So that's where our guest comes in today, because he's going to share a what could have been story, which ironically includes one of the biggest franchises in the world today, and again, ironically, now involves a company that owns the biggest CCG in the world. I am delighted to welcome to the Booster Pack our guest today, an author and game designer, Quan Williams. Quan, how are you?
I'm all right. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to tell my story.
Oh man, I am so excited for it. It's something that absolutely amazed me when I found out that this was happening way back when. So before we jump in though, I do want to get to that, but I just want to learn your history with collectible games before we hear about the game that you sort of designed and sold. So when did you first learn about collectible games?
It was my sophomore year of college, and a buddy of mine had just learned how to play Magic the Gathering. I was hanging out at his place. I don't know if we were studying or just playing PlayStation, because we were enthralled with Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which is still one of the all-time great.
Good one.
But he was like, "Hey, man, a buddy of mine at my school, he attended Drexel in Philadelphia, and it's like, yeah, a buddy of mine taught me how to play this card game called Magic the Gathering. We got nothing better to do. Can I show you how to play it?" I was like, "Sure." And the first couple of times I played, I was hooked. It was the strategy involved, the artwork involved, the storyline, and the fact that one of my best friends thought the game was cool was enough for me to really give it a try. And then from there, I took the game back to my buddies at the University of Michigan and found out that a number of them had taken an interest in the game. So it was just serendipity, and we all got together and we started playing. And it became a love affair between me and the game that continues to this day. Magic the Gathering is my absolute biggest hobby. I love the stories behind the game. I love the lore behind the game. I love the game itself, the social interaction, the Magic the Gathering arena, plus the other plethora of video games based on MTG. I'm just a total Magic the Gathering nut.
I will join you in that. I will join you in that status for sure.
But as far as other games are concerned, Magic the Gathering is by far the largest straight game that I'm involved in. I've dabbled in role-playing games before. None of them quite stuck. I just didn't like the fact that you need 3 people to play, and I was only able to get me and another guy. And I've played other board games, obviously. Obscure games, mainstream games. There was a cool game called Boss Monster.
Yeah, I love Boss Monster.
I just tried out with some friends of mine that we enjoyed. And there was a game I really wanted to get into called The Spoils.
Oh yeah, yep.
Magic the Gathering, and an attractive woman came through, offering to show everybody the game.
Mm-hmm.
She gave me a free deck. I enjoyed the game. It was like Magic for people with dirty minds.
Yeah, hardcore players and people with a wicked sense of humor.
Yes, yes. And I enjoyed it. Unfortunately, the game didn't last long enough for me to get deep into it. But so yeah, I'm willing to try any new game, and as long as I can find people to play with, it's gaming is something that I enjoy quite a bit.
That's awesome. So obviously, way back in these in your college days and stuff like that, you were really impressed by Magic. Like you said, it was almost love at first sight. So you obviously saw that this sort of new type of game, the collectible card game, was fertile to come up with brand new ideas. So tell me about what you did when you came to, designing or thinking up an idea for your own collectible game.
As a creative type guy, I get lots of random ideas. They come and go. Sometimes I'll get one. I'll doodle around or tinker around with it until I get to a point where I can't do anything further, or I get bored, or another idea comes and supplants the other one. But 1994, 1995 was right around the time that the internet was starting to expand and grow. The World Wide Web was starting to catch on, and people were making websites about whatever. The technology and design of these websites, for most of them, was rather primitive. But I was blessed enough to have access to U of M's, I don't know what to call it. They had a system where every student had their own web space.
Like a GeoCities or something back in the day.
And, it's used for everything from email to storage. But I was given a platform where I could actually experiment and try to build my own website. And I did. And I had a lot of random things on it. Doodles I had done, music projects I had been part of, because I dabbled in hip hop. I still do to some extent. But yeah, I had had one of the first to have his a website for his music group featured on Yahoo search engine, which was really cool. But yeah, so this was a platform where I could just post any random idea I got, anything I was working on, projects, see if it caught on. And I had the idea. I love Magic the Gathering so much, but I'm also an 80s baby. And I grew up on all kinds of, I grew up in the wonderful time where a cartoon was essentially a 30-minute long toy commercial.
Yep. The He-Mans and the Transformers.
Yeah, I knew that. I embraced it. I loved it. And I was feeling nostalgic. I was like, hey, Transformers is a great property. I read the comic books as well as watching the cartoons and collecting the toys. And Marvel had just relaunched Transformers Generation 2, if I remember correctly, which was a limited edition comic book series expanding on and continuing the story they had in their previous comic book. And I had and basically it was like a chocolate and peanut butter moment where it was like, what if we made a game like Magic the Gathering for the Transformers? And it was like a light bulb, and I was like, and I just ran with all of these ideas and what features would the game have. And I decided, you know what, let me post these ideas on my website, see what people think, and we could just play a wonderful game of what if. So I posted my ideas, and I did get feedback. I had people emailing me, telling me which of my ideas would work, which of them wouldn't work. Some of them brought in some of their own mechanic ideas. So it was comforting to know I wasn't the only one who thought about this. And some brought in their own lore and their own I won't say properties, but their own characters, their own races of robot warriors to interact with the Transformers. And it just became, I won't say a massive thing, but there were people who had taken an interest.
It was a little niche thing that you had crafted in this very primitive internet space.
Yeah, very much. And it's funny because I don't know how these people came across my ideas, because I didn't really advertise. I knew nothing about chat boards, or there was no social media at the time. And I had a very limited sphere of people I was connected to online. So the fact that so many people had found me in the first place and thought enough of me to respond and contact me about it is kind of humbling.
Okay, wow. It is absolutely amazing that you were able to craft, basically a little mini fan community about this like game this creative little game that you'd come up with. So I'm wondering then, how does it go from just being this thing that you post on a page to you taking it more seriously? How does it evolve to that next step and eventually gets the attention of a big company?
Well, one of the people who contacted me was a gentleman by the name of Richard Garner, who lives in Richmond, Virginia. And basically he's like, hey, I love your ideas. I have a few ideas of my own. What do you say we actually try to make this thing happen? And, me being, I'm a very opportunistic guy. I always strive to recognize opportunities and take advantage of them to the best of my ability. And once he said that, something clicked and I was like, hey, maybe this thing can actually have legs. Maybe we can actually do something with this. And I'm just a college kid. I go back and forth between classes and my work study job. I go to my comic book shop on Wednesdays to get my latest issues of X-Men and Green Lantern. And I was like, you know what? Why not? So from that point in time, we exchanged emails and we started collaborating, exchanging ideas, exchanging mechanics. He let me know what his ideas were. I let him know what my ideas were. And we were able to work out a system and actually create a game engine, which became the BattleCards engine. Richard is a very creative, very dynamic guy. He's a very enthusiastic, and he's also very personable. He's easy to get along with. And, if he sees this, I'll make sure he sees it. It was an absolute pleasure to work with him. And my life has been better having him as a colleague, as a co-creator, and as a friend.
That's awesome that you guys were just able to find each other on this, budgeting internet and connect and have such a strong connection and create something out of it. So how does it go from you two just like pitching ideas back and forth, sort of developing a game system, to getting the attention of a huge company?
Well, first of all, we wanted to have an actual product to show, not just ideas. Fortunately, I was a graphic design major at the University of Michigan School of Art and Design. So it was nothing for me to put together templates, to take his rules and actually create card templates. And we actually went through and developed cards based on his ideas, based on some of my ideas. He drew inspirations from the cartoons. I drew inspirations from the comic books. And it was a matter of going in, finding artwork. I had all my Transformers comic books ready to go. So I scanned in art which matched the cards that we were doing. He was able to get TV scans of the actual episodes of Transformers, and he was able to get that in. I believe we use artwork from the actual toys. So it was a mishmash of everything Transformers related. It's something like when Magic the Gathering recently did the Dungeons and Dragons spinoff expansion set, where they drew inspiration from everything, from the Forgotten Realms books where they had Drizzt cards, and from the core game where they had Beholder cards, and from the cartoon where they had Tiamat and Avenger, and it used actual cartoon art for some of their more limited edition cards. We did the exact same thing. Everything Transformers we could get our hands on, we poured into the game. Even to the point where I'm referencing things like obscure references like Liege Maximo, which was one random thing that appeared on the very last page of the very last issue of the Transformers Generation 2 Marvel comic.
So it sounds like the ultimate fan project that sort of, your love and passion for the property and your graphic design skills and love for Magic all combined into this thing. And obviously it got the attention of a lot of people, and they could feel that creativity and that passion for the project.
Specifically, it got the attention of Cactus Marketing, which was a game marketing firm, still is a game marketing firm, based, I think, in Richmond, near where Richard lived. He got at me and was like, hey, I managed to get an audience with Cactus, and these guys actually can pitch our game to Hasbro. So I was stoked. I was like, oh, wow, this may actually happen. So we polished our game up. We got our materials together. We actually Rich actually copyrighted the game engine, if I remember correctly. So BattleCards engine. And to do that, we had to come up with a separate property that was not owned by another company.
Right. So not Transformers, because that was owned by Hasbro.
Precisely. So Rich created Metal Face, which was his own world of the concept was in a kind of dystopian future. I won't say dystopian, but in the far future, human beings have got the ability to transfer their spirits and minds into robotic bodies, and it created a whole nother species of being. And there were different ideologies. So there was a war. So it was very. So we created a similar conflict to something that was going on in Transformers. Except it was our own properties, and we created an entire lore behind it, characters. I think I created a character called Scrap Heap.
Sounds very Transformers inspired.
Most certainly. And he even went so far as, after this was over, he developed his own tabletop role-playing game based on Metal Face, which, if you look hard enough, you should still be able to find. And Rich, if you see this, maybe you should make that available, because now you've got people who the game is on their radars.
Yeah, nice plug there.
We developed our engine. We submitted it to Cactus, and they managed to actually get an audience with Hasbro, where they showed the game, they demonstrated it, and Hasbro loved it.
Wow, that's awesome. How many cards did you have like ready to show them?
I believe we had at least, I want to say, 100 cards done. We created an entire set of cards that was readily playable. Rich had sheets printed up, and we had physical card games that we had sent to Cactus, and they were, like I said, they were able to show it to Hasbro, demonstrate it, and Hasbro was impressed. They thought it was a great idea and something worth pursuing, if they didn't already have a contract with another game marketing company.
Oh no. So another game company had Transformers as a license or something?
Nope. Another company had, basically Hasbro had signed with, what is the name of the company? I cannot remember. I want to say like Defiant or Dynamic or something like that. These were the guys who were behind Hasbro's Star Wars card game.
Right. Oh, Decipher.
Yes. And Hasbro had signed apparently an exclusive deal with them. So they will be the only ones handling trading card games for Hasbro for the duration of that contract. So even though they were impressed with the game and they liked it, they were unable to do anything with it. So it was a bummer. It's like seeing us come so close to having this kind of breakthrough, and being able to say I did something really cool in my college years, which may turn into something bigger. And having and being denied for a technicality, it was a bummer. And I was like, oh well, what can we do? At the time, I still want to do something with the engine, so I actually started tinkering with making a version of the game based on Harmony Gold's Robotech franchise.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, I had developed the whole. I had basically tweaked some of the rules, made some changes to allow for the transforming cards to have pilots, so we could do Veritex and the Zentradi, and I'm a big Southern Cross series of I have with the hover tanks and the helicopter that transformed. And
well, that's so perfect. That's such a perfect license to bring into it, because the flavor from Transformers meshes really well with Robotech, right?
Yes, and I had developed this whole thing, and I was like, hey, you think maybe Cactus could approach Harmony Gold, and we can see if we can get something going with that. But before we could go any further with that, Rich came with a new development where Hasbro was like, hey, we're working on a game already based on Beast Wars, the mutating card, and the whole Beast Wars expansion of Transformers. We would like to take some elements of your game engine and incorporate it into our new board game. And basically they offered to buy the game engine so that they could basically take whatever bits and pieces of it they like and incorporate into their new game.
Right, sort of like a board game combiner from Transformers. They were just taking elements here and there.
Yes, and at this point in time, I was like, Hasbro's offering me money for something. Yeah.
As a college kid, that must feel pretty damn good.
Oh, it felt great. It was a real feather in the cap. So Cactus makes the deal happen. Hasbro pays I think me and Rich about $2,000 a piece for the game engine, and from there they went ahead and put together Beast Wars, the mutating card game. They sent both of us a huge box full of copies of the game. I think we got about 10 I want to say anywhere from 5 to 10 copies of the game a piece to do what we rolled with. I gave them out. I kept one for myself. I gave out copies to friends and family. And I actually donated a copy of the game to the dormitory I was at. And because they had board games in their library. And I was like, hey, this is kind of a way of giving back to my school.
And you can be like, hey, that Beast Wars game in the library? I designed that kind of.
Oh, yeah, that's a great way to pick up girls.
Yeah, chicks love Beast Wars card games.
Precisely. So, but yeah, it was a great feeling. And on top of that, not only did they buy our card game, but they kind of licensed, I guess it was like a licensing deal to where we got a puny percentage of any Beast Wars games sold. So, I thought I had it made. I was like, wow, Hasbro's going to put this game out. We're going to market this game. It's going to be a hit. It's going to be like all their other games. And I'm just going to be sitting there collecting my checks and just, living the life, so naive me. Unfortunately, things didn't quite work out that way. They test marketed the game in New York and Canada, in select stores in New York and Canada. And it sold a few copies. I think I got one royalty check for like $500 or something. But apparently it didn't do well enough for Hasbro to decide to release the game to the masses, and it was the game pretty much from that point was DOA.
Right. Well, I personally saw it. I grew up in Australia, and it made it all the way over there. So I definitely enjoyed it back when I was a kid as well. So thank you very much for all that work. Like whatever piece of it is yours, I appreciate that.
That's excellent. Where there a few years later, I had gotten a call from Rich saying, hey, Hasbro's interested in putting together their own Transformers trading card game, and there's a chance they may want our input. So I was like, bet they're going to finally release BattleCards. We can go with this. And
finally, I'll be sitting on that pile of money.
Yeah, basically. And Richard was like, not exactly. Basically, we sold the engine of the game to them, so we don't have any claim on this at all. Mm-hmm. But we maybe it was, the whole thing happened in such a blur. Mm-hmm. I can't really remember all of the details of what Rich told me, what we could and couldn't do. I just thought this was another opportunity, so I actually went in and redid the rules for our BattleCards game, but mm-hmm. I designed them in a way so that it looked like the instructions for an old Transformers toy.
Oh, awesome!
When you bought and you had the little fold-out thing which showed
diagram, yep,
the graphics, the text, the colors. I tried to make it look exactly like one of those instruction books, and I sent it to Rich. I believe he sent it to Hasbro. And I heard nothing from anybody about what became of it. Eventually Hasbro did release a Transformers trading card game. I don't think it did that well, otherwise it would still be going right now.
Yeah. So we should mention as well, all this happened before Hasbro bought Wizards of the Coast.
This was way before Hasbro bought Wizards. I think Hasbro tried to make a G.I. Joe card game at the time. They had tried multiple times at multiple different versions of a Star Wars game. And I don't know if Star Trek was done by Hasbro or by another company. But yeah, it was that whole period where these people were trying to make versions of the game card games of these properties, and with varying degrees of success. I remember there were like at least 2 or 3 different versions of Marvel and DC making trading card games.
Yeah, definitely a few of those.
The first one was called Overcharge or Overpower.
Overpower, yep.
And the second was the Versus card system, which I actually thought was cool because it incorporated Marvel, DC, Image, and all indies. And I was rooting for that one to succeed, and it didn't.
Yeah, I've had a couple of the creators from that game on the show. It's a much loved game still today.
Oh, nice, very nice. So that was pretty much the whole saga of Transformers BattleCards. Like I said, nothing ever became of my Robotech idea. I don't even remember what I did with the files. And like I said, our original property, Metal Face, is it's still out there somewhere. I actually, if I may have to get in contact with Rich directly to see where he has that available, so that anyone taking an interest can find it.
Well, let me know, and I will link it in either the description on the podcast version or in the description on the YouTube version as well.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that.
Awesome. So I do want to spend just a little bit of time circling back to the game, the one that created it all. So what I did is I proxied up some of the cards that I could find online here, some of the original ones that you originally made. So I just was hoping you could talk me through what the sort of gameplay was like and what the goal of the game was. So here we have, for those watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see me holding it up. Otherwise, I will put a link to these cards in the description on the podcast version. But if you just want to just give me a rundown of what this sort of card is, it's got a bunch of stats along the bottom.
Yes. Well, essentially, this is the war between the Autobots and Decepticons is indeed a war. And most wars are over territory. So we wanted to encapsulate that in the trading card game. So every player has landmarks that they put into play.
So that might be like one of these?
Yes, exactly like that. And certain landmarks may have bonuses to whoever controls the landmark. And so you and your opponents are fighting over these landmarks using your character cards. Since they are Transformers, they have the ability to transform, and each version of the character, say like the Optimus Prime card you had, has different bonuses and different stats, which change depending on which version they're in. There's strength, there's intelligence, there's power, and a whole bunch of other different aspects. As you see, strength, intelligence, endurance, speed, ranking, skill. I forgot what FAP and COU meant. But yeah, all of these stats play into their overall ability and their overall strength and their overall defense. So basically, you assign, you're going to attack an opponent's property. So you assign you send one of your warriors to that property to basically gain control of it, and they respond with one of their warriors. Now, in a pure fight, it's similar to Magic, to where the strength of your robot goes against the defense of your opponents and vice versa. But you do have cards that are, I believe, intangible cards, and I think tactics cards.
Okay, so that might be something like this. This is a rammed.
Exactly like that. Yes, that is it.
And you can see that amazing graphic design as well with the cartoon imagery and stuff like that. That looks really dynamic.
Yes. So basically, you will play these tactics and you play these intangibles at various spots in the game to give yourself an advantage or to give your opponent a disadvantage, which would impact the battle over the property. And whoever wins gains control of that property. And if I remember correctly, the object was to gain control of the most properties. And I think gain control of property was worth a certain amount of points, and whoever had the most points won.
Right. So do you remember what ended the game? Like what actually triggered the end of the game? Like a certain number of properties or?
And it's so long ago that I can barely remember the rules. And you know what? I just remembered, I believe I have these rules on file somewhere in one of my hard drives buried in I wish I had thought of this before this interview because I would have brought it up.
That's right. Well, with the PDFs that I had found like this, I did find a version of the rules and I kind of skimmed it, but I haven't had a look. But I will try and post that somewhere. So anybody watching this episode who wants to check it out and sort of see what this game was all about, what impressed Hasbro all those years ago, can do so.
Beautiful. So yeah, I think there was a point total. I want to say it was 20 or between 20 and 50, but please don't quote me because like I said, in many, many years, and I can't remember all of the details of it.
Well, I got to tell you, for 1996, people have to remember that this is before, computers are what they are, scanning in the art, getting the TV shots. You couldn't just pull something off a Google image search. You guys went to amazing detail, and you must have actually had some reel of toy boxes or something to scan that art in.
Most certainly. We were collectors. Rich had an extensive collection of old Transformers. I still had a few. And I had friends, and all of my friends were Transformers nuts. So if I didn't have it, I was able to go to some of my friends to get some of the box art. And once again, I had an extensive collection of the comic books. So I was able to get some choice imagery from from the comics to use. There was one called, I think the card was called Overcharge, where you were able to boost up the power of your robot by considerable amounts in exchange for them dying at the end of the turn. And I actually found a picture of Galvatron like getting boosted up by Unicron in one of the comic books, and I was like, I have to use this. So yeah, and like you said, technology wasn't where it is now to where you could just go on a search engine and find the artwork. We had to do a lot of scouring, and it was fun at the time because we're going through and reliving old childhood memories and finding all of this cool artwork and reworking it, because if I used a comic book, I had to get rid of the thought bubbles and the speech bubbles and
crop around it and stuff.
Most certainly. And but the process of creating the game was very, very fun, and I enjoyed it.
Well, I gotta say, it looks like I have played a lot of those old games from that era, that 95 era. And it, again, I will hold up one other card. They look amazing. They look so professional. They look so detailed. Like the textures and everything on it are just gorgeous. That's a Megatron there. What are these? Do you remember what these symbols down the side mean?
Yes, I think those were classifications of the different if I remember correctly, those were classifications of the different warriors, like where if someone was tactical or someone was a warrior class or a healer class or something. And I believe those classes played into some of the tactics that you used and some of the intangibles, so that certain warriors with certain classes would get benefits or detriments depending on what the card said. I could be wrong, but if I remember correctly, that's what we had them for.
That's amazing. The fact that you've remembered that much so far is just blowing my mind. Now, do you remember what elements of, this is a character card. Do you remember what elements got used in that Beast Wars game? I see that there's a bunch of stats down the bottom here. I think that was similar in the Beast Wars game.
Precisely. The main thing was the combat aspect because if you've ever played the Beast Wars game, there is a game board, and it's like a chessboard where there are different pieces. And the object of the game is you have all of your warriors on one side, your opponent has all their warriors on the other side, and you have to maneuver through the game to essentially remove your opponent's warriors off of the board.
Mm-hmm. Take all their pieces.
Yep. And basically every time two warrior cards were adjacent to each other, there was a battle, and they would fight. And basically you would I think there was a card you would draw a card, and the card would give, say, a particular boost to a warrior or to a warrior in a certain way. So each warrior had different stats and in different categories. And if you pulled a card, it would highlight which of those categories were combat. So if you pulled a pink card, that will be their endurance or their, I guess, their intelligence. So their intelligence would be matched up.
And was there a similar mechanic in the BattleCards game?
I don't think so. I could be wrong, but we didn't the characters didn't battle based on their arbitrary stats. Everything was tied into their power and toughness, and the arbitrary stats affected their power and toughness, if I remember correctly. But with Beast Wars, I think the different stats fought directly, and I could be wrong on that note too, because it's been years since I played Beast Wars. Side note, I actually took my copy of the game, and I used to work with kids after school for a program called Youth Quest here in Flint, Michigan. And it was an it's an after school program where we teach the kids different things. We try to enhance their learning outside of class and give them fun activities to do. And we had game day when I wanted to show them the game that I created. Also to give them something entertaining to do, and also as a way to inspire them, like, hey, your teacher put this game together and got it published. So I donated my copy of my last copy of Beast Wars to this particular school I was working at, and the kids loved the game.
That's so cool. I hope it inspires one of them to do something creative, whether it's game design or something like that, just to see directly that you were able to put it out through one of the biggest toy companies in the world.
I'll get to that in a minute. But as far as the game is concerned, if I remember correctly, yeah, essentially however the combat worked, the loser, their card was pushed back one space. And if they got pushed back off to one of the edges, they were pushed off of the edge, and that card was taken out of play.
I was going to say, I vaguely remember it. I definitely played that version of it as well. And I did my own tweaking of it and stuff as well. And I believe me and my friends, once we had the cards, because they had not just characters from the show, but toy characters as well, we'd use the cards to interact and play with our toys and decide whose toy was dead and whose wasn't.
And actually, if you ever got a chance to read the instructions for the game, it suggested, hey, you can play this game with your actual Beast Wars toys. And I was like, hey, the toys are way bigger than the board. I wonder how that works.
Kids will make it work.
They'll make it work. So, but yeah, and basically the winner was whoever was able to push all of his opponent's cards off of the board. I think the aspects that they took from ours was the combat, maybe not directly, but in a way of matching stats up and saying whoever had the better stats won the battle, and and obviously the transformation aspect. We did ours differently than they did theirs, or did we? I can't remember.
Doesn't matter. Nobody's going to hold you to it 25 years later.
But they actually had specific cards that said transform, which that was how you were able to transform your let's say your Optimus Primal card from a giant ape into the robot, and the stats changed based on how based on which form they were in. And that was one aspect they took from our game, where the different forms had different stats. But yeah, we had some very big ambitions for the game. On a side note, we had already planned out expansions. We were going to introduce the Gestalts, which would be an entire expansion of just the Stunticons, the Combaticons, the Constructicons, the Aerial Bots. All of those were just going to be one expansion of just all of these combiners. And we were going to do it big, but hey, Seliger.
It is what it is. Yeah, exactly. Legal entanglements and stuff. Okay, cool. So you did mention you wanted to get to something just a second ago. What was that you wanted to let me know?
Well, you were mentioning about how I was trying to inspire my kids to develop, to basically, whatever you can do it. And there's no limit, there's no time limit. I would often tell my kids about entrepreneurs who had started successful businesses up at their age, at ages 12 and 13, and they're starting $50,000 companies. But to make it tangible to them, I actually showed them Beast Wars, and I was like, hey, I was 19 years old when I made this game, and here it is, you're playing it. It was out in stores. And it actually did inspire some kids. There was a lot of my students were Latino, and there were two kids who, they had Mexican parents, and they were fooling around playing checkers, and they had decided to change the rules and make their own rules to the game, just like, and it's like, hey, we saw what you did with the Beast Wars game, and we were fooling around with this, and I told them, this is good. Why don't you guys actually put something out? And you're like, we can do that. And it's like, yeah, I had just self-published a brand new game of my own through a company called The Game Crafter, which does print on demand board games. And if I can do it, you can. So I actually showed them, since I couldn't get them online to actually go visit the website, I showed them screenshots of the site of what the Game Crafter did and what they offered as far as game resources, like pawns and dice and all this other stuff. And I was like, hey, how about for an extra credit project, you guys invent your own game, and I'll see about getting permission from my supervisor to help you publish it.
That is so cool that you were able to sort of mentor them through that process.
Yep, they created a game called Pirates versus Knights, where they took the pirate pawns that were on sale at Game Crafter and the knight pawns, and actually put together a similar game to Beast Wars: The Mutating Card Game, except with these pawns, with using pirates and knights and their own different idioms and combat systems. And I helped them develop it. I helped them create their own game board, and I got permissions from my supervisor and from their parents to actually set them up an account with Game Crafter and legitimately publish their game. So I actually ordered a couple of prototypes, gave it to them, and it's like, okay, well, this is your game, play it.
That is so cool that you were able to help those kids through that. And obviously, having somebody like yourself, they were able to see themselves, put themselves forward and see that that's developed. And that honestly is part of the reason I wanted to have you on. I wanted to share your story with people. So if there was anybody, kids or, adults, kids of all ages, they say, that wanted to, maybe be inspired by this story, just a college kid messing around online, things are done differently nowadays, but you were able to inspire these people. And I wanted to put your story out there. There's a ton of people like me that are creating games, but I want to share everybody's story,
Excellent. So yeah, speaking of creating games, I did tell my kids that I had self-published the game through the Game Crafter. That game is, I believe, still available. It's a bit hard to find, but it's out there. In previous Youth Quest activities through other schools, I actually had my students help me develop the game. They play tested the game. They gave me suggestions on how to make it better. And the game is called Syndicate.
I'll make sure I link it in the description as well.
It's a deck building game based on the criminal underworld, the mafia and organized crime. And I just came up with this idea. It's like, you know what? I had just gotten an itch at one point in time to create. And it was like, you know what? This whole thing that we did with the battle cards and with the Beast Wars Mutating Card Game, I did it before. Why not try to do it again? So I came up with the idea of having 3 warring criminal empires, 3 warring mafia families, and the police, which counts as a 4th family. And the different factions have different styles of doing their thing, and they're clashing for control of the city. And by the city, that's the game itself. But they control it by accumulating G's. Instead of life points, you have G's that you invest into into playing these cards, which help you accumulate more G's. And just like with the battle cards, you have properties that these guys fight over. Except instead of fighting for control, each property has a G amount that they're worth. So you send your guys, your criminal underlings, to collect G's from this property, and your opponent, who controls the property, sends their guys to stop you, and go back and forth. And there are different tactics. Like I said, the 4 mafia families operate different ways. The Drago family is very aggressive. They blow things up, and they just go all out, balls to the wall.
Right. Different play styles.
The Manola family is very defensive minded. They build up their defenses. They build up their resources, and they wait you out. They prevent your attacks, and they wait you out. There's the Turchi family. They're gamblers. They're risk takers. There's a lot of coin flipping, dice rolling.
That's awesome. That's so cool that you've got this mechanical sort of structure to the way the families work. Sort of like in Magic Color Pie.
Most certainly. That is very inspired by the color wheel. And of course, the police, they're very sneaky. They like to look through your deck and take cards out. They like to use your cards against you. And it was very fun working with my students to develop the game, and finding art and altering it so that people couldn't sue me, so that I could when I put the card game out. And it was a great experience. Obviously, it's ironic that I work as a graphic designer, I work in marketing, and I work in digital marketing. I'm actually searching for work as a digital marketer. But marketing my game was not something that came easy to me. I guess it's easier to help other people promote their stuff than it is to promote your own. And, the game is still out there and not a lot of people know about it.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna take a suggestion on that and make sure I promote the hell out of Syndicate. It sounds fantastic. I will let everybody who's listening to this know. Again, it'll be linked in the description, and I'll also make sure it goes up through the Twitter as well.
Thank you so very much. But Syndicate spawned another idea, because one of the few people who did purchase the game played it and they loved the game. But their only minor concern was, it's kind of hard to have little kids playing a game about organized crime. And could there be something done about that? And that set off another light bulb. What if I altered this engine, took this engine and remade it for a more kid-friendly game? What if I took the organized crime thing and took it to school? And that was what turned, so I developed an entirely new game. I took the engine and I tweaked it, and I put the setting in school, with the added emphasis being on in-school behavior. As a teacher and as someone who's worked with children after school, I've seen a lot of the issues that teachers have, that school people have in general with behavior. There's bullying that goes on, there's cheating, there's disrespectful behavior. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if there was a way to reinforce positive values and positive interactions and positive behavior? So that was the whole focus on this new card game that I call Rule the School, where you have these properties, they are now classrooms, where you have gym class, English class, the principal's office, all of these landmarks in school, where you have students, and the whole premise is, instead of being a mafia don, you're now a school counselor. And you have a group of children who are under your charge and who you're responsible for. The object is to show that you have better behaved children than your opponents. So you send your children, and they all have their own stats that influence how they behave. Each child is a different child. Maybe they're an it kid, maybe they're a nerd, maybe they're a jock, or maybe they're a golf kid or whatever. And they go to these different landmarks, and they're judged based on their behavior. Now, they already have a certain amount of skill within themselves, but you need a certain amount of skill to gain credit for that particular landmark. And more often than not, what the kid has is not enough to get the credit for that landmark. So you have to explain that you've seen this kid do different behaviors that are positive to boost their skill up. These are called I saw you cards. I saw you helping another child. I saw you being kind. I saw you helping the teacher after school. I saw you raising your hand to talk. I saw you doing all of these positive behaviors. This boosts up your skill so that you can gain credit. However, your opponent has I saw you cards too, and they can show that your child did negative behavior to detract from their points. I saw you cheating. I saw you stealing. I saw you fighting. I saw you bullying, and that detracts you. You have a set number of times that you guys can play your I saw you cards. And at the end of that, however many points that kid has is the points that the kid has. And the question is it enough to get the credit from that particular landmark? If it's not, the kid goes back and they don't get the credit. And if they do get the credit, and the game continues. There are intangible cards called new rules, which are introduced, which are similar to things that teachers might do during the course of running a school. Maybe there's a class transfer, or you have to expel a kid, or things like that. And those are intangible things that affect the gameplay indirectly. And you have teachers, and these are specific teachers cards you can play that give specific boosts to specific types of kids. So you put a coach card, the coach likes the jocks, and the coach may like sixth graders, because every kid is in a different grade.
It's really relatable too. Obviously, every kid is in school and can relate to all these things, and everybody goes through school. So even once you grow up, it's so relatable. It's such a good idea.
Yes, and like I said, it's also, I also wanted it to be an educational tool in addition to being a fun game, so that you can actually have teachers have this game in their classroom, so that the kids can play it and learn things about what's properly behaved in school. My vision for this is to have teachers having this game, to have school districts putting the game in their schools, in the classrooms of teachers, parents to buy this game for their kids. You know, I would love for there to be some kind of tournament scene, although it's for a deck building game. I haven't seen a lot of that.
Yeah, some of them have it, like Ascension and stuff have a tournament scene, but I think it would be really fun to have like a school tournament or something, like with those teachers and stuff like that, showing the kids how to play, and then, you know, being able to play against each other. I think that's fantastic.
Most certainly. So the game is still I won't say it's still in development, but the engine is done. The cards are designed and developed. All that's missing is illustrations. I am an illustrator, and I know a bunch of great illustrators. The thing is, none of us work for free. So right now I'm in the process of brainstorming ways to generate startup capital to get this game produced the way I really want it produced. Basically hiring the illustrators, myself included, to really get some really cool artwork for the game. Obviously the cost of printing, the cost of publishing, I'd rather not do this as a print on demand thing. I want physical copies of the games that I can distribute to school districts, schools, teachers, and I'd love to have it in stores in some capacity. So I have a big, very ambitious vision for the game, and it's just a matter of generating the support financially to make it to bring it to life.
Well, if you end up exploring anything like crowdfunding or, you know, something like that, like a Kickstarter or whatnot, make sure you let me know via Twitter or email, and I'll make sure that everybody, again, who sees this episode and who's following me at that point in time knows about it, because it sounds like a fantastic idea. I couldn't be more excited about it, because I will definitely back it as well.
I'm still in the early planning stages of figuring out what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it. But I will keep all of you posted, and wherever this particular interview appears, there will be updates. So yeah, keep checking back, and hopefully you will see a way that you, if you want to get involved, there will be a way for you to get involved.
That is awesome. All right, well, thank you so much for sharing your time and those ideas. Again, I'm going to link Syndicate and your other social media and stuff in the description. So if you want to check Quan out, make sure you see the description of either the YouTube channel or the audio version of this once it goes up. And I could not be more delighted by being joined by you today. I will also post somehow I will post the PDF files that I found for the Transformers battle game, so you can check out Quan's work from 25 years ago and give that game a go. See what impressed Hasbro all those years ago.
Thank you so very much. And to everyone watching this video, thank you so very much for taking the time to hear my story, and hopefully it inspires you in some way, shape, or form to, hey, you know, sometimes a wild idea is a wild idea, but some of the most innovative and some of the greatest things that you've ever had part of started off as wild ideas. So don't put limits on yourself. Anything is possible. I know it sounds cliche, I know it sounds tired, but it is true. Anything is possible, as long as, and you're only one good idea away from making something special happen.
Well, just to your point there, you know, people laughed when Richard Garfield and Peter Atkinson explored the idea of doing a collectible card game. People thought nobody's ever going to buy more than 2 packs of something and then not have a complete game. Who's going to want half a game? And that's what's uniting us today. So again, like you said, any idea is the next big idea.
Yes, most certainly.
Absolutely. So this has been the rare slot of the booster pack. Thank you so much for joining me, Quan. Goodbye to the audience. Goodbye from you.
All right. Thank you so very much for taking the time to interview me. I had a blast, and happy gaming.
Thanks so much. And to everybody listening, thank you so much. Keep shuffling and proxy with power. Give it a go. It looks totally fun. Awesome. Thanks so much. Bye. And there you have it, guys, a rare slot episode, the bonus episodes for the Booster Pack podcast. Now, thank you so much for Quan for joining us. Remember, if you want to check out his current games or even find him on social media or his blog, I've linked those in the description. Also, I will try and find somewhere to link the battle cards that I printed out so that you can check them out as well. I do have a version of the rules, but if I get another version from Quan, I will make sure I update the link to that as well. So if there's anything else you want to hear about as far as collectible game related on these bonus episodes that you think might not fit into our regular booster pack episodes, so things like topic-based stuff, whether it's market analysis or anything like that, you can let us know. Any suggestions are welcome. And if you have been checking out our regular episodes on the booster pack, you can suggest any game you'd like to hear a little bit more about. We'll find a creator who was involved in it and bring you an episode. I would love to hear about it. You can either let me know via the comments of this show, or you can also reach out to me on social media. That is either on Facebook via facebook.com/CCG History, or you can find me on Twitter, where I tweet every single day. I'm a lot more accessible on there, which is twitter.com/CCG History, of course. Again, I have been Rant. Thank you so much for joining me. Subscribe here or a follow on social media. It goes a long way to bringing more content to you, so I really appreciate that as well. Until next time, remember, like I said in the episode, keep shuffling and proxy with power. All right. Bye.